Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. And on today's show, we're talking about the flying sad face emoji that is the current state of the Herald. Now, of course, the Herald had a bit of a rough start all the way back in the beginning when it was introduced in October of 2014. Now, of course, one of the first things that caught a lot of people off guard was the asymmetrical design, which many players refused to purchase or, raised a lot of threads on the forums about because asymmetrical ships don't work in Star Citizen, therefore it shouldn't be. Those same players then, of course, went on to complain about the Vanduul Scythe because it too was asymmetrical and therefore wouldn't work. Except, well, they didn't. So, how does that make any sense? However, moving on. Now, there are a lot of issues with the current Herald. Getting in and out of it in 0G can kill you. Getting into the secondary seat in the back can cause the game to crash. Some of the visuals of the ship flicker very noticeably while it's sitting parked or in flight, as you're going to see. It has a lot of odd little bugs and quibbles, but one of its biggest problems is that it has nothing to do in the universe. Can it fight? Not really. Its weapons loadout certainly affirms that. It's not really that much of a fighting ship. It's more of a runner. It can't carry cargo. Its gun racks don't work. It really is just kind of a glorified personal transport at this point. But with so many missions requiring a player to go to a certain location, pick something up, and then bring it back, it kind of leaves the Herald out in the cold in terms of all the other ships in the game, which can fulfill at least some roles, whereas the Herald really doesn't fulfill any. Now, this, I think, is largely a product of the fact that while the Herald was fairly quick to develop, the features and the gameplay that it is built around have taken far longer to develop. And the current state of the ship is not so much an expression of CIG not knowing how to make the ship, but more an expression of, like, okay, let's just get it working, and the gameplay features, once those are all brought in, then we will give the ship a proper once-over, and then it will be properly finished. But for right now, it flies good enough. The primary role of this ship is the delivery of information on an interstellar scale. It's meant to go from one star system to another and deliver information, updates, contracts, that sort of thing. The problem is we don't have interstellar travel yet in the game, so that role just does not exist. Now, it could conceivably be said that you could make it so that you could deliver information from, say, Port Olisar to Grim Hex, or from any of the locations on any of the mining planets to Port Olisar for later delivery further on down the chain, but that is probably an element of gameplay that still would require a fair amount of development time, and since most of the development time recently has been spent in bringing 3.0 to life, that was probably a feature that more or less only benefited one ship in the entire lineup, and so it was easy to see why it would have been cut or pushed off had they actually intended to deliver something like that with 3.0. Now, another feature that this ship is supposed to take advantage of is electronic warfare and hacking. And even though there have been all these little hints scattered throughout the game, especially in Grim Hex, which seem to indicate that there are going to be hacking functionalities or at least some kind of shop that handles electronic warfare type items, there really hasn't been any solid advancement on that front beyond a few casual mentions in various interviews. The hacking system and also the electronic warfare system of the game is something that we have seen very little information on, and even though there are certain hints and certain very basic write-ups on the topic, we've never really seen any concrete evidence of any work being done, and that's because It's largely a secondary system to the game that benefits very few ships. The Herald, the Sentinel, things like that. There are a lot more ships that require a lot more things to be brought online, which are more or less universal to so many of those ships, whereas these very niche specialist vessels probably don't deserve all the development time that it would take to bring these systems online when there are so many other ships that could be done more or less kind of all at the same time by designing those other systems. So hacking and electronic warfare are probably something that is going to be outstanding for quite some time. And that really is the curse of the Herald. I mean, it's a ship that has arrived before any of the systems that it needs in order to function are even on the horizon. Interstellar travel, information running, hacking, electronic warfare are all things that are well into the future. And the ship, unfortunately, is here now. So even given its troubled state, it's still a ship that holds a lot of promise, but a lot of the annoying little bugs that it has right now are probably not going to see a fix until the ship is at a place where they really need to bring it up to snuff. There are a lot of other things that need to be brought into the game, and so it probably doesn't justify putting all that development time and budget into a ship that has no gameplay features to support it. So, I mean, that kind of leaves you with the question, then why build the Herald in the first place if you knew that the systems that support it, the systems that give it its reason to exist, are not going to be in game and not for quite some time? And chances are it was probably because at one point it seemed like that they weren't that far off. And whereas the ship's development continued, development on those features was probably pushed aside for more foundational elements within 3.0 and getting 3.0 out the door. Now that 3.0 is out the door, possibly these avenues will open up again, and some time can be spent on developing perhaps some type of rudimentary functionality to give this ship something to do in the universe, though we haven't heard anything about that yet. The sad truth is that so many of the game's core features require either implementation or refinement. The game is still a far cry from a finished product. And the features that the Herald is meant to service, the needs within the universe, are fairly niche. And so CIG is probably going to be spending the majority of their budget on much more universal features that benefit all players rather than those that benefit the owners of just one or two ships. By comparison, Drake's other ship, the Cutlass, which is a jack of all trades, touches on so many systems within the game that it really does receive a lot of TLC and a lot of care from CIG. It incorporates so many different features that it really becomes kind of a showcase for a lot of these systems. And so CIG obviously puts a little bit more money and a little bit more time behind keeping the Cutlass up to date and looking good rather than the Herald. The Cutlass simply is a very accessible, very affordable credit-making machine in the PU right now, and it's kind of the reason why it has become so dominant in the game and why there are so many Cutlass pilots out there. Truthfully, the Herald holds the same type of promise that the Cutlass does. Once these systems come online, the Herald really is probably going to be the Cutlass of that role. It incorporates so many good features. The problem is that these gameplay systems simply don't exist yet. Does that mean that you should get rid of the Herald? I don't think so. I'm not getting rid of mine. I still love this ship, and I still think it's a fantastic ship. It's just that right now the game is in a very difficult state. Without even basic features like character customization, it's hard to see them spending budget on, a niche ship such as this. I still think it's a great ship, and it's never going to be a ship that I sell, but I also accept the fact that it's probably a ship that's going to require a little bit more time and before CIG really sees fit to spend the money and the time on developing the systems it needs to really shine in the game. I still hold to what I've said about the Herald so many times, that I think that this is one of the best starter ships in Star Citizen. We just have to be a little patient and wait for these systems to all come together. So, Herald owners like myself and this guy over here have just got to settle for leaving our ships parked a little while longer and waiting for those features to come online. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.